He didn't think anyone saw. A few extra dollars out of his own pocket to help an old man whose card wouldn't swipe. But when a lawyer walked into aisle 7 a week later with an envelope in hand, everyone learned what quiet kindness is really worth. This is Hopeful Horizon. Before we begin, drop a comment with where you're watching from. And don't forget to subscribe for real stories that prove no good deed ever goes unseen. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead at Miller's Market, casting their familiar harsh glow over the checkout lanes. It was 8:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, and Marcus Williams was counting down the minutes until his shift ended at 9. The store was nearly empty except for a few stragglers picking up last-minute items. A college student grabbing energy drinks, a mother with a fussy toddler buying baby formula, and an elderly man slowly making his way to Marcus's register. Marcus had been working at Miller's for 11 months now, ever since he'd graduated high school. The job wasn't glamorous, but it paid enough to help his mom with rent and put a little aside for the community college classes he hoped to start in the fall. He'd gotten good at reading customers, the impatient ones who tapped their cards before he'd even finished scanning, the chatty ones who wanted to tell him their life stories, the tired ones who just wanted to get home. The elderly man approaching his register fell into a different category entirely. He moved slowly, deliberately, pushing a small cart that held just the basics: a loaf of bread, a can of soup, a carton of milk, and a small package of ground beef. His clothes were clean but worn, a flannel shirt that had seen better decades, and pants that were a size too big, held up by suspenders. "Good evening," Marcus said with a genuine smile. "How are you doing tonight?" The man looked up, seeming surprised by the warmth in Marcus's voice. "Oh, I'm fine, son. Just picking up a few things." His voice was soft, cultured, with the kind of careful diction that suggested someone who'd once been used to being heard. Marcus began scanning the items, noting how the man, who looked to be in his 70s, watched the register display with the intensity of someone calculating every cent. When Marcus announced the total, $18.67, the man nodded and began fumbling with an old wallet. First came the coins, quarters, dimes, and nickels, counted out carefully on the counter. Then crumpled dollar bills, smoothed out with shaking hands. Marcus watched patiently as the man counted and recounted, his movements growing more frantic with each pass. "I'm sorry," the man said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I thought I had more. Let me try my card." He pulled out an old debit card, the kind with a magnetic strip that had seen better days. Marcus swiped it once, declined. He tried again, more slowly. Declined again. Behind the elderly man, the line was growing. A woman with a full cart sighed audibly. A teenage boy checked his phone with obvious irritation. The college student from earlier shifted impatiently from foot to foot. "I'm sorry," the man said again, his cheeks flushing with embarrassment. "I can put something back. Maybe the meat? That's the most expensive." "Let me try it one more time," Marcus said gently, though he knew the result would be the same. The card was declined for the 3rd time. The elderly man's shoulders sagged as he reached for the package of ground beef. "I'll just take the bread and milk," he said, his voice thick with shame. "That should be enough." Marcus felt his heart clench. He'd seen this before, people forced to choose between necessities, dignity crumbling one item at a time. But something about this man's quiet resignation struck him differently. Maybe it was the way he'd said thank you when Marcus had greeted him, or the care with which he'd counted his coins, or simply the fact that he was buying the same modest groceries Marcus's own grandmother might have chosen. Marcus glanced at the small tip jar beside his register, a mason jar with a handwritten sign that read, "College Fund." Inside were a few crumpled bills and some loose change, the meager accumulation of customers' spare change over the past week. Maybe $12 total. Without hesitation, Marcus reached into his own pocket and pulled out a $10 bill, part of his lunch money for the rest of the week. He'd figure out something else to eat. "Sir," Marcus said quietly, leaning forward slightly so the people behind wouldn't hear. "Don't worry about it. You're all set." The elderly man looked up, confused. "I'm sorry?" "Your total is covered," Marcus said, sliding the $10 bill into the register along with the coins the man had counted out. "Have a good night." "No, no," the man protested, his voice rising slightly. I can't let you do that. I just need to put something back. Sir, Marcus said firmly but kindly, it's already done. Please take your groceries and have a good evening. The man stared at him for a long moment, his eyes beginning to well up. But why? You don't even know me. Marcus bagged the groceries carefully, placing the bread on top so it wouldn't get crushed. Because everyone deserves to eat dinner, he said simply, and because someone helped my grandmother once when she was in a tough spot. Just pay it forward someday if you can. The woman behind them in line, who'd been checking her watch impatiently, had fallen silent. The teenage boy had stopped scrolling through his phone. Even the college student seemed to be paying attention. The elderly man reached across the counter and briefly squeezed Marcus's hand. Young man, I don't know what to say. You don't need to say anything, Marcus replied. Just take care of yourself. As Marcus handed over the bag of groceries, the elderly man's composure finally cracked. A single tear rolled down his weathered cheek, and he made no attempt to wipe it away. Young man, he said, his voice trembling slightly, thank you for seeing me. The words hung in the air for a moment, heavy with meaning that Marcus didn't fully understand. There was something in the way the man said it. Not just thanks for the money, but thanks for something deeper. Thanks for treating him like a human being. Thanks for not looking away. Thanks for not making him feel small. Of course, Marcus said, genuinely moved by the man's emotion. Anyone would have done the same. The elderly man shook his head slowly. No, son, not everyone. Not anymore. He took the bag with both hands, holding it carefully, as if it contained something precious. What's your name? Marcus Williams. Marcus Williams, the man repeated, as if committing it to memory. Thank you, Marcus Williams. I won't forget this. With that, he turned and walked slowly toward the exit, his back straight despite his age. Marcus watched him go, noting how he seemed to carry himself with more dignity now than when he'd first approached the register. The woman who'd been waiting behind him stepped forward, her impatience replaced by something that looked like respect. That was really nice of you, she said quietly. Marcus just nodded and began scanning her items. To him, what he'd done wasn't extraordinary. It was just what felt right. He'd given up his lunch money for the week, but he'd helped someone who needed it more than he did. That seemed like a fair trade. As he finished his shift and locked up the store, Marcus thought briefly about the elderly man, wondering if he'd made it home safely. But by the time he got to his car, his mind had moved on to other things. His upcoming shift tomorrow, the textbook he needed to buy for his college class, the conversation he needed to have with his mother about their electric bill. He had no idea that 3 miles away, the man he'd helped was sitting at a small kitchen table, writing a letter by lamplight. A week later, Marcus was restocking the cereal aisle when Jenny, the evening manager, approached him with a puzzled expression. Marcus, there's a man here to see you. Says it's important. Marcus looked up from the boxes of cornflakes he'd been arranging. To see me? Are you sure? He asked for you by name. Marcus Williams, the cashier. He's waiting up front. Curious and slightly nervous, Marcus followed Jenny to the front of the store. Near the customer service desk stood a man in his 50s, wearing a well-tailored gray suit. He carried a leather briefcase and had the kind of authoritative presence that made people take notice. Mr. Williams? The man asked, extending his hand. I'm David Hartwell, an attorney here in town. I was wondering if I could have a word with you. Marcus shook his hand, his mind racing. Had he done something wrong? Was there some issue with the register? Sure. What's this about? It's about an elderly gentleman you helped last week, Mr. Thompson? Marcus frowned, trying to remember. I help a lot of people, Mr. Hartwell. I'm not sure which. He had some trouble with his debit card. You covered his groceries out of your own pocket. The memory clicked into place. Oh, right. Yeah, I remember him. Is everything okay? Is he all right? Mr. Hartwell smiled, and Marcus was relieved to see it was a warm expression, not the serious look he'd been expecting. He's fine, Mr. Williams. In fact, he asked me to deliver this to you personally. The lawyer reached into his briefcase and pulled out a thick manila envelope. Marcus's name was written across the front in careful, old-fashioned cursive handwriting. What is it? Marcus asked, taking the envelope but not opening it. I think it's better if you read it yourself, Mr. Hartwell said. But I will say this. You made quite an impression on Mr. Thompson. He's been thinking about that evening all week. By now, they'd attracted attention from other employees and a few customers. Jenny stood nearby, openly curious. 2 cashiers had paused their work to watch. Even Mrs. Rodriguez from the deli counter had come over to see what was happening. Should I open it now? Marcus asked. That's up to you, Mr. Hartwell said. But I think you'll want to read it carefully. With trembling fingers, Marcus opened the envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter on expensive stationery, along with what appeared to be a check. He unfolded the letter first, his eyes scanning the elegant script. Dear Marcus, I don't know if you remember me, but I'm the old man whose card wouldn't work last Tuesday evening. You probably thought I was just another customer having a bad day, but I want you to know that you were wrong about something you said. You told me that anyone would have done the same. Son, I've been shopping at that store for 3 years, and I've watched dozens of people in similar situations. Some cashiers look away, some customers complain, some managers get involved to hurry things along, but no one, not one person, has ever reached into their own pocket to help. I want you to know who I am, because I think it might help you understand why your kindness meant so much. My name is Harold Thompson, and I used to own Thompson's Hardware on Main Street. You might remember it. It was there for 47 years before I had to close it. I was never wealthy, but I was comfortable. I had a nice house, a successful business, and enough money to help my neighbors when they needed it. I thought I was set for life. Then my wife got sick. Cancer, Marcus. 3 years of treatments, specialists, experimental drugs that insurance wouldn't cover. I sold the business to pay for her care. I sold the house. I sold everything we had. And in the end, I lost her anyway. For the past 2 years, I've been living on Social Security and what little I had left. Most days, I get by fine. But sometimes, like last Tuesday, I miscalculate, and I don't have enough. I've been that old man fumbling with coins at the register more times than I care to admit. But you didn't see an old man fumbling with coins. You saw a person who needed help. You saw someone worth helping, and you didn't hesitate. I want you to know that your $10 bought more than groceries. It bought me dignity. It bought me hope. It reminded me that kindness still exists in this world, even when everything else feels dark. I've been thinking about you all week, wondering what kind of young man gives up his lunch money for a stranger. I asked around town, and people tell me you're saving for college, working hard to build a better life for yourself and your mother. That tells me everything I need to know about your character. I don't have much left, Marcus, but I have something I want to give you. I've instructed my lawyer to set up a small scholarship fund in your name. It's not a fortune, but it should be enough to cover your community college expenses and maybe help you transfer to a 4-year university when you're ready. Some people might call this excessive, a college fund for $10 worth of groceries, but they would be missing the point. This isn't about the money you spent. This is about the person you are. This is about someone who sees others as human beings worthy of dignity and respect. I hope you'll accept this gift in the spirit it's offered, not as payment for your kindness, but as an investment in the kind of person this world needs more of. Thank you for seeing me, Marcus. Thank you for reminding me that there's still good in this world. With deep gratitude, Harold Thompson. Marcus read the letter twice before the words fully sank in. His hands shook as he looked at the check attached to the back of the letter. It was made out to him in the amount of $25,000. The gathering crowd had grown silent, watching his face as he processed what he was reading. Jenny's eyes were wide with surprise. The other employees were exchanging glances, trying to understand what was happening. Mr. Hartwell, Marcus said, his voice barely above a whisper, I can't accept this. It's too much. I just helped him pay for groceries. The lawyer smiled and placed a gentle hand on Marcus's shoulder. Son, Mr. Thompson was very specific about this. He said you'd probably try to refuse, and he wanted me to tell you something. He paused, consulting a note from his briefcase. He said, tell that young man that kindness is an investment, not an expense, and this is his dividend. Marcus felt tears welling up in his eyes. Around him, the small crowd had broken into spontaneous applause. Jenny was crying. Mrs. Rodriguez was shaking her head in amazement. Even the customers who'd stopped to watch seemed moved by what they'd witnessed. There's one more thing, Mr. Hartwell said, reaching into his briefcase again. Mr. Thompson wanted you to have this as well. He handed Marcus a small framed photograph. It showed the facade of Thompson's Hardware, circa 1985, according to the date stamp in the corner. In front of the store stood a much younger Harold Thompson, his arm around a smiling woman who must have been his wife. They looked happy, prosperous, full of hope for the future. He wanted you to know, Mr. Hartwell explained, that kindness has a way of coming full circle. He said you reminded him of who he used to be before life got hard, and he wanted to help you stay that way. Marcus didn't buy groceries that night. He bought dignity, and in return, he got something no paycheck could ever give him, a chance. If this story moved you, drop a comment with where you're watching from, and subscribe to Hopeful Horizon for more real stories that prove kindness never goes unnoticed. Until next time, stay humble, stay kind, and remember, every dollar given in secret echoes louder than 1,000,000 spent in pride. This is Hopeful Horizon, signing off.